Gypsy Tales. Story number 2. The Apprentice and the Cursed Castle. Years upon years ago, there lived a poor lad in the province of Bukovina. For 7 hard years he had been a blacksmith's apprentice, and during that time he had not even learned how to shoe a horse. Hence, when his apprenticeship was over, he decided to seek his fortune elsewhere. He walked to the nearest city, but by the time he arrived there, night had fallen and the huge entrance gates were closed. He gathered some straw together, shaped it into a bed, lay himself down on it, and fell asleep. When he awoke the next morning, he noticed a hole in the wall. He crept through it and entered a magnificent castle. To his surprise, he realized that there was not a living soul in the city. The emperor, the empress, the princes, and the princesses, as well as all of the other people, had been turned into stone. When he entered the great dining hall of the palace, a cat came and placed some food on the table. After he had finished an excellent repast, the cat sat down next to him and gave him a deck of cards. Then he spoke. "A lord will arrive this evening, and he'll want to play cards with you. Play with him until 10 o'clock. Then slap him in the face. Between 10 and midnight, ghosts, evil spirits, and devils, as many as there are blades of grass on a lawn, will torment you. Under no circumstances are you to say even one word to them, no matter what they say or how much they threaten you. If you should falter and speak as much as a single word, then you too will be turned into stone, and you will remain a stone figure for hundreds of years. Do you think you can perform this task? Do you think you can stand up to the evil creatures?" "Yes," replied the apprentice. "The past 7 years have taught me how to endure a great deal of pain without uttering a word of complaint." He stretched out on a cot and slept until 9 o'clock. Then he heard a loud rap on the door. A tall man in a dark cape entered the room and asked the apprentice if he would like to play cards. They played until 10 o'clock. Then the lad slapped the stranger's face. Instantly the hall resounded with fearsome howls and screeches. Ghosts and devils rushed over to the lad and asked him what he was doing in the palace. When he did not reply, they threatened to throw him into a lion's den. But when he still did not answer, they tried new tactics. They promised him sacks filled with gold and silver if he would only talk. But the lad didn't say a word. Then they pushed him and shoved him. They kicked him and slapped him in the face. But the lad didn't say a word. They pulled his hair and twisted his ears. And just when it seemed that a moan of pain would cross his lips, the clock struck 12. Instantly the spirits disappeared. The lad dragged himself back to the cot and fell asleep. When he awoke the next morning, he noticed that parts of the statues were no longer stone. The arms appeared to have life in them, and as he walked down the long hall, they moved as if to salute him. The cat once again served him food and said, "Tonight, everything will be much worse. But if you can maintain your strength and stand up to the monsters, you'll be richly rewarded." At exactly 9 o'clock, the strange lord, this time dressed in a velvet cape, appeared before him. "Let us play cards," he said in a deep and sinister voice. At 10 o'clock, the lad once again slapped him in the face. Instantly, the spirits returned. This time, they had bodies of men, but the heads of tigers and snakes and bats. "If you speak, lad," they said, "we will tell you the secrets of life." But when he did not speak, they punched him and tripped him. They pitched him and bit him. But nothing they did could make the apprentice talk. And with the first chime of the clock striking midnight, they disappeared as mysteriously as they had arrived. The next morning, when he awoke, he heard voices in the palace. He realized that the statues were no longer stone, but that they still were unable to move. The cat brought him food and royal clothes. He ate, then put on the handsome clothes and went into the princess's chamber. She smiled at him and said, "One more night, my lord, and I shall become your empress." Then her eyes closed and she fell fast asleep. Upon returning to his chamber, the cat warned him of the coming night. "Tonight will be the worst. It'll be almost unbearable. But if you have the strength, you'll be richly rewarded." And indeed, the cat had told the truth. This night was the worst. The spirits changed their shapes into those of his father and mother. Since the lad had not seen his parents for 7 years, he was almost anxious to speak to them. Once he almost opened his mouth, But then he remembered how the cat had warned him of the treachery of the evil spirits. And when they saw that the lad did not fall for their tricks, they changed into tarantulas and scorpions and threatened to sting and bite him. Finally, they promised to kill him if he would not talk. One of the spirits turned into a giant, lifted a huge boulder above his head, and prepared to hurl it upon the lad, threatening to crush him. Just when it seemed to the boy that he was lost, just when the boulder was leaving the giant's hands, the clock struck 12, and absolute silence returned to the room. The next morning he awoke to the playing of music. A valet entered his room, bowed low, and asked, "What would your majesty like for breakfast this morning?" But before the lad could answer, a handsome young prince, dressed in the finest clothes the poor apprentice had ever seen, said, "My friend and future brother-in-law, I salute you. You have freed this kingdom from the evil spell with which it had been cursed. 10 years ago, my sister refused to marry the sinister lord with whom you have played cards for the past 3 nights, when she learned that he was an evil spirit. To take his revenge, he turned every living thing in the castle into stone. Once a year I was permitted to stalk through the castle in the form of a cat. And it happened that just on that day you appeared, and you bravely withstood all the tests that were imposed on you. Your reward for having freed us is to become our king." Upon hearing this, the young lad dressed himself in the magnificent wedding robes of a prince of the realm. When he entered the banquet hall, the lovely princess came up to him and embraced him. The wedding was held that very same day, but unlike other wedding celebrations that last for just a few hours, this one continued for 3 days and 3 nights. In the meantime, the lad had made arrangements to have his parents brought to the castle. Great was everybody's surprise when they found out that the parents of their handsome young king were gypsy folk. But as much as the young prince tried to persuade his parents to stay with him in the castle and enjoy his good fortune, the gypsies refused. They understood that their own happiness was not based on riches and the comfort of regal living. They were people of the earth, nomads whose restless spirit made them move from town to town and from village to village. Their pleasure lay in the simple life around the campfire and in song and dance. Hence, the prince was not surprised one morning to find that his parents had left, but he was deeply moved to find the message they had left for him. All is as all must be, each man to his own destiny. End of story number 2.